Taoiseach, Friday is Daffodil Day. This is perhaps the most iconic and recognised annual fundraising campaign in the world. Cancer does not distinguish between location, age, status or circumstances. Cancer makes its own rules. Sadly, this journey will take, this year, almost 45,000 people will hear the news that they have cancer, and this year their journey will begin. And sadly, that journey will take them down the road of endless hospital and medical appointments. It will also take them down the roads with obstacles that only reveal themselves as their journey progresses. Very soon, cancer patients will discover that their illness is not the only challenge they face. They must also contend with the costs associated with their treatment, which can be as high as €1,000 a month. The everyday costs associated with a cancer diagnosis have been raised many times. The financial struggles at a time when a person can be at their most vulnerable are a burden that they should not have to carry. What is not generally known is that a cancer diagnosis can present a lifelong financial burden for patients long after they have recovered. New research from the Irish Cancer Society has revealed that many people affected by cancer at any time during their lives face being refused financial products. These include both insurance and mortgage protection cover. Even if the adult individual was diagnosed with cancer as a child or a teenager, they can still face challenges when trying to access financial protection for the future. People who have a cancer diagnosis in their past are 3 times more likely to have difficulties getting insurance than the general population. They are twice as likely to have problems obtaining a mortgage. It seems that their past diagnosis is being used as a stick to beat them financially. Despite the fact that more and more people are now cancer survivors, they continue to be discriminated against. The Irish Cancer Society is calling on your government to implement the right to be forgotten into legislation so that people do not have to declare a cancer diagnosis 5 years after recovery. This has been implemented by many other European Union countries. People who have been diagnosed with cancer in the past are simply asking that their future lives are not defined by cancer. They have completed their cancer journey. They have navigated the endless issues that cancer patients must face. They have struggled with the loss of income due to inability to work. Many do not qualify for a medical card, which subjects them to hospital charges, the cost of travel and parking, and many other associated bills. Many have had the pressure and embarrassment of debt collectors arriving at their doors demanding payment for unpaid medical expenses. Their journey with cancer itself may be over. They have been blessed to have survived. Penalising them further is both cruel and heartless, and they deserve the right to forget. So, Taoiseach, I'm asking you, could you please enable a government decision to grant them this right?
Thank you, Deputy Lowry. Taoiseach.
Thanks very much. I want to acknowledge Deputy Lowry for raising this important issue and for his ongoing advocacy for people who have cancer and those who survived it. Friday is Daffodil Day, and I want to commend the Irish Cancer Society on their decades of advocacy and indeed service provision to people with cancer and cancer survivors. Successive national cancer strategies have delivered continuing improvements in outcomes for Irish cancer patients in terms of earlier diagnosis, better treatment and improved survival. 5-year net survival for all invasive cancers averaged 65% for diagnoses between 2014 and 2018. This is a substantial increase. It was only 42% back in the 90s. So we're now in a situation in Ireland where you're more likely to survive cancer than die from it, and there are more cancer survivors than people who have cancer, and that's an important step in the right direction. Treatment of our medical oncology, radiation oncology and surgical oncology services also continues to improve, with an estimated 200,000 people living with and beyond cancer in Ireland. In relation to the issue the Deputy raised on insurance, I want to acknowledge that this is a real problem, one that is being considered by government at the moment. I also have to acknowledge that insurance is ultimately about the calculation of risk, and that is how premiums are calculated, but they must be calculated in a way that is fair. And I also want to acknowledge the sensitivity of the matter and to assure the Deputy that officials are now engaging with stakeholders and colleagues across Europe to better understand how they've dealt with this issue. And we are aware of the Irish Cancer Society's Right to be Forgotten Beyond Cancer report, which was published back there in February. The government is also aware that a number of EU member states have implemented such a policy, and on foot of that, officials are now examining the approach taken in these jurisdictions. It appears to be not consistent across jurisdictions. It's done differently in different ways, so we need to consider what might work best in an Irish context. The issue is also being considered at EU level. The European Commission's Beating Cancer Plan includes an initiative to address fair access for cancer survivors to financial services, including insurance, via code of conduct and a reflection on long-term solutions. So, as I indicated earlier, we acknowledge this is an issue that needs some work. We acknowledge that other EU countries have acted on this, and for that reason, the Department of Finance is doing some work on this, and hopefully we'll be able to make some proposals in the coming months.
Thank you. Deputy Lowry.
Taoiseach, I welcome the fact that the government is taking the matter seriously and looking at it, because you, as a qualified doctor, you will be aware that it takes enormous strength, courage and willpower to overcome and to conquer cancer. The journey is long and arduous. It's an endurance test that stretches both the mind and the body. A medical all clear is greeted with an overwhelming sense of relief and joy, and it is a happy release from the burden of a debilitating, prolonged illness. As a survivor, to be told years later that you do not qualify or that you are ineligible to access products because you have previously had cancer is a hammer blow. And this unfair approach undermines a survivor confidence and creates a doubt. It segregates and categorises former cancer patients. It is a blatant form of discrimination, Taoiseach, which causes untold further hardship, unnecessary hardship. And I'm asking you, as a government, to expedite this matter and follow the example of other European Union countries and make this part of legislation.
Thank you, Deputy Lowry.
Thanks again, Deputy. As I indicated earlier, the government is examining this matter and is seeing what's done in other European jurisdictions and how we might do something similar here in the Irish context. Department of Finance officials have met with Insurance Ireland on this, and they'll also be willing to meet with the Irish Cancer Society to pursue it further. Insurance Ireland advises that life insurance must be underwritten on a case-by-case basis, and that different types of cancers present different types of risks of recurrence, which has to be reflected in their underwriting practices. Insurers use statistical, medical and actuarial data to make underwriting decisions to ensure the terms and conditions of insurance are appropriate and in the interest of all policy holders. Any rating that may be applied is usually time-bound. Generally speaking, subject to no further complications, a rating would apply for no longer than 10 years.